Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this week's edition of Fake Accents Unite. It is New Year's Eve, and tonight I'm joined by the Britisher, as always. Good evening, sir.
Good evening.
And
my God, you sound energetic.
And by Tailed Feature. Good evening.
Good morning.
So, was that something approximating a noise, or is someone strangling you from behind?
Is Discord fanning about again? Because people were complaining last night they couldn't hear me.
No.
How shall we say? It had aspects of a low. The chat that just goes claw.
Oh well, I'm afraid I can't do anything about
that. All we got was Irma.
Well, that's going to make as much sense as what I usually say, anyway, isn't it?
Yeah.
I have no idea.
That is that. Yes.
Oh.
Well, it's
clear enough.
It's a pleasure to have both of you on. We are hoping that potentially Sarah will join us later, but who knows? She can be quite inconsistent with whether or not she turns up, but that's her prerogative.
I think the word you're looking for is elusive.
Elusive, that's the word. I don't want to be, I sound really passive-aggressive when I say that. And I was genuinely just trying to say, she's welcome to join in if she wants to, even if we've started. No, that sounded passive-aggressive as well. I cannot escape being rude. Apparently so. Type cats to demand a Britisher movie review. And people are typing cats in the chat, Britisher.
They wish me to do a movie review on Cats.
Presumably the new one.
Yes, I mean, I don't believe there is an old one.
Well, no, unless they're talking about the theatre room.
I believe the only reason one would want to hear me do a movie review was because it's supposedly just, cat's vomit. Effectively, it's a regurgitated furball, isn't it? From what one hears.
It's not only one of the worst films ever made, but it's been memed as I'm sure it's not that bad. But the special effects.
It's supposed to be bad.
What I mean is it's going to be bad by the standards of the production values of today, which doesn't necessarily mean it's a terrible film, but it's probably going to be. It's one of those things which audiences have. It hasn't translated well from theatre to cinema.
Well, put it like this. Given that the BBC is this kind of publicly funded organisation and whatever, they are always very careful when they make film reviews. But yes, they will praise something to the nines, particularly if it's terribly progressive. But they don't tend to come in and completely destroy something. And even they. Even they it was just like the death knell, as in sort of, this is horrendous.
Yeah.
So when they were struggling to find something positive to say about it, it must truly be ghastly.
Well, aside from anything else, the bizarre animation style they've chosen to use for the characters,
that is that.
And yes. Not to mention the many characters who are sort of famous faces, that sort of thing. Ian McKellen, I think, is in there.
The fact that James Corden's in it is enough to put.
Oh my god! Just James Corden. James Corden in general in anything is enough for me.
Well, I mean, I could imagine worse.
Go on.
Jeremy Corbyn could be in it instead of James Corbyn. Corden or whatever he's called.
Some ancient cat talking about how things.
Jeremy Corbyn's in it.
Jeremy Catbin, yeah. Just ignore that terrible joke. But we
already have.
But I think they made a mistake as well, just in general, making it. I think it's live action, but with heavy CGI, and I think we're moving now again more into an era where CGI and heavy overuse of it is more frowned upon after films like the Transformers franchise, for one, which is Michael Bay does special effects for 3 hours of your life that you'll never get back, basically have gone downhill and become less profitable. And films from makers like Christopher Nolan, and that sort of thing, who tend to be less heavy on CGI.
To the Nolan sisters.
I mean, I say that when Marvel is a thing, right? But aside from the Marvel juggernaut.
No,
that
Marvel
is.
isn't the thing. No.
No.
But please, yes.
Colin P. Smith in chat is saying that Judi Dench said her character was trans. Cats.
Trans species.
Talking of her character was trans. Did you hear the latest? Announcement from J.K. Rowling?
Wait, because Architect of Fate has just told us we are 264 seconds late. Thank you, Architect of Fate. Appreciate this.
Counting,
But
right?
yeah, what were you saying? Sorry.
Well, J.K. Rowling made her latest announcement. Do you remember some time ago she announced that Dumbledore was gay?
Yes. And now she's being eaten now, isn't she?
And she kind of made various other announcements, I think, about characters over time and whatever, that didn't seem to in any way relate to the actual tales, if you know what I mean.
Yes.
Dumbledore being gay had absolutely nothing to do with the story.
Well,
it's
it was
clearly something that's been added ex post facto.
And it also makes several of their interactions slightly creepy. But there was also a thing where, because of course she'd done this retcon, she was talking about her next book, which is the Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them sort of thing, and how Dumbledore and whoever the main character is in that, can't remember his name, but she was like, oh, they had a sensual sexual relationship, but it's all off camera. It's not going to be actually in the film. There's actually no hint of them being gay in the film. It's just that she had to retcon in that, oh, if he was gay in this one thing, he was gay and closeted in the wizarding community, clearly in this film, and it just seemed like nonsense.
Well, no, the reason I couldn't help mention this, you just kind of, you said something that just sparked the memory. I think it was the Judi Dench thing, was that J.K. Rowling announced that Voldemort was a nationalist.
Oh yes, of course, and he would totally have voted for Brexit. And
you just sort of hear this, and just your own voice is just echoing inside your skull as you're just sort of roaring, no, please, for heaven's sake, no.
My absolute favourite retort to that particular comment was someone saying, gentle reminder to J.K. Rowling that her wizarding world separates itself with a wall of magic from the non-wizarding world and considers itself to be an elitist society. So, there is that. They're not revealed. They are a secret people who live apart in their own communities. It really...
But no, it's just, when that came out, I just hollered. It was one of those moments where, I mean, there were literally tears of joy. I cried. I laughed so hard.
I mean, it's clear from the books.
Care. Whenever she says anything, I just go, "You're mental. Go away. Leave. Stop. Just stop. You have enough money.
You made £1 billion. Enough is enough, JK. Just go on."
And I still wonder to what extent she deserved that £1 billion and not the marketing team. But yes, that's another issue.
I mean, it's her proprietary intellectual property, so it's not really a problem.
Oh no! I fully understand that. Just in the same way that she invented wizards and the concepts of wizards.
All
Hades
right.
The Phoenix, and those sort of things.
Are you going to take J.K. Rowling to court and have some kind of battle for originality because at 20 years old you invented wizards?
No, it's just sort of, half of it is sort of various mythology.
Was the Britisher coming back in his time machine at 20 years old the first spark that made people believe in magic? That's what I want to know.
Well, I mean, who knows? Perhaps I was somewhere, in a brief foray into ancient Greece, and I actually saw some writer invent the idea of the Phoenix or some such thing, and then I came back and there was J.K. Rowling publishing it in a book.
At this point,
I mean, it could be such a thing, if you know what I mean.
I think at this point I look at J.K. Rowling, and instead of her actual name, I just look at her as just kidding, and that's enough for me. But there we go. Aaron Telford says, let's never forget that Die Hard is a Christmas movie. Britisher, you got a retort?
It is not a Christmas movie. You are not only wrong, you are deluded. In fact, I would compare you to one of those hardline Remainer types that just don't want to accept reality. But anyway, moving on.
Next, you'll be saying that "Stop the Cavalry" by Jonah Louie isn't a Christmas song.
Do I?
Or is that too a modern?
Am I familiar?
Cultural reference.
Stop the Cavalry. I think I know which one that is.
No, I mean, I don't think it's really it's not a particularly Christmas song, but it's just played at Christmas. That's all.
Yes.
Do you remember there was that year where Rage Against the Machine got to number one?
They got Christmas number one
because there was always a counter campaign to prevent the X Factor leader getting Christmas number one, and
that was beautiful. And Rage Against the Machine donated all the money from the sales of the single that month or something like that to charity. So
that's amazing.
Good on them.
Yeah, but does that mean Rage Against the Machine's single is a Christmas song though? I don't think so.
No.
But at least,
not really.
At least
number ones aren't always Christmas songs.
At least Die Hard has the decency to be set at Christmas, Britisher.
It is set at Christmas. Yes, there is no doubt of that. No, it's just not a Christmas movie.
It's as Christmassy as the Grinch, Britisher, and stop being one. Greed the Avaricious says, the problem with Transformers... That's right, you don't get any right of reply there. The problem with Transformers is that there are far too many human characters and not enough straight-up Autobot-Decepticon conflict. Yeah.
So is this person complaining about the presence of Megan Fox in that film?
Because Britisher sure isn't. No, it's not about that. It's about what happened in the later...
It's about Mark Wahlberg.
It's about, the later ones, where Mark Wahlberg has a family tragedy now in every film. I remember...
Can I ask, have either of you ever watched 2.5 Men?
No.
Because I believe that was a pre-Transformers appearance of Megan Fox.
Okay.
And if you can watch that and not laugh out loud, then you are the Grinch.
Only me then.
Fair enough.
Well, put it like that. The plot basically sort of surrounds the fact that they've got this rather butch housekeeper, if you know what I mean. I think she's called Bertha, and frankly, she's terrifying. And her granddaughter then accompanies her to work one day because I believe her daughter, that being the granddaughter's mother, is in court.
Okay.
For being in trouble, as you can imagine. It kind of indicating, yes, this is a rather troubled family, if you know what I mean. And the granddaughter is Megan Fox.
Mm-hmm.
And Bertha then decides to give her various chores around the house to kind of, earn her keep, so to speak. And you've got these two grown men in the house with Megan Fox in a rather cropped top and hot pants, cleaning windows and so on. And the two of them just looking at each other going, you do realise that if either of us make a move, Bertha is going to kill us.
And
it's that sort of tortured... That kind of pain of seeing but not being permitted to react in any way, shape or form, which I must say that particular episode is a killer.
I have to say, Britisher, I can just hear the lust in your voice, you crotchety old pervert.
Well, I mean, the moment you stop being the moment the moment your mind stops telling you that you would be interested in such things, however completely unrealistic it is, then you die.
All right, Britisher.
Before we move on, apparently I have to call you a cuck, Britisher. That's from Binary Surfer.
Oh well,
I
what
don't know where that comes from. He just
it's
told me.
it's nice to know that Binary Surfer has, as everyone else, got into the Christmas spirit.
It's something that he sends you every week. It's almost as if he's got an unhealthy obsession with you.
I know. No. What is it? What do they say? I live rent free in his head.
Much as
imagine being obsessed with a cuck. That's the new low.
Especially, or at least someone he believes is a cuck or wants to call one. It's almost like he can't escape you. You just know that he's got permanent Britisher commentary running through his brain for every action that he takes in the entirety of the world. It's like a curse that you put on him when you invented magic at 20 years old.
Let's hope that this line repeats again and again and again in his head. I love you too, Binary Surfer.
That's my line. It's like, just as something I say, I love you too. Let me see. The Harry channel donated $5, and I missed his super chat, so I apologise to him. He says, I know this may be contentious, but movies with practical effects, 2001 and the original Ghostbusters hold up so much better over time. Do we agree with this statement, gentlemen? I do, certainly.
Well, actually, that is one of the reasons why the moon landings are real.
Why? Because the footage doesn't hold up over time?
Well, just think of it. If it really would have been all trickery and effects, imagine how dated and obvious they would all look by now.
Well,
do you understand what I mean? Just consider how anything that is even produced 10 years ago looks, creaky and old when it comes to special effects. So now think of what the best special effects of the day would have been like in 1969. And then tell me that everybody has still got trouble discerning whether it's real or not.
I memean, yeah, fair enough. I don't think either me or Tailed Feature are moon landing deniers.
Oh, no, I am not saying that. I just thought, when it comes to special effects dating and whatever, I think, that is actually always a very good argument in favor of the moon landings being real, because if you think of it, they should look like the old versions of Flash Gordon by now.
Fair enough. I just think it was just a strange thing for you to jump to, and I was just like,
well, that's my job. I'm here for time.
I know. We're here to be entertaining after all. But it's just one of those things where it's like, have you been considering this for a while, Britisher? Has someone from your close personal family been screaming at you about how they faked the moon landings?
Actually, I have to ask this. When I am referring to the old episodes of Flash Gordon, do either of you two even know what I'm talking about?
I am well aware of what the old episodes of Flash Gordon are, in black and white, no less.
I'm heartened to hear that. So you do know what I would mean by sparkler-powered spaceships.
Oh yes, indeed. And I'm trying to remember of a similar film
with smoke that embarrassingly goes upwards as the ship is traveling oh so slowly forwards. Yes.
I'm trying to remember. There is a film from about the same time as Flash Gordon was produced, which I preferred. And I cannot remember the name of it for the life of me. But it was like, speaking of these sort of practical effects, they so you know how in sci-fi nowadays they may have sort of a display which shows the different planets in the galaxy and whatnot. And they had one of these, but it was a physical model, and it was basically just a big gyroscope in the middle that swung loads of these different weighted balls all around it, and they're trying to identify where everything is. And by today's stat, like, it looks fantastic and it's well filmed, but you just look at it from the perspective of today and you just go, that's not doing anything. That's just a gyroscope that's hanging there in the middle of the room. But like I don't know, to sort of 12-year-old me, it was fantastic. I just wish I could remember the name of the film now. I had to study it for English GCSE, but there we go. What was Let me see.
I've derailed everything completely.
I think so.
Again, haven't I?
We were talking about something, and then so we've got we were talking about practical effects, and people in chat are expressing surprise that I saw 2001. I didn't particularly enjoy it. But then it does.
Agreed.
But then it does.
Agreed. Yes.
It does have a reputation, doesn't it, for being a film where half the audience walks out after 2/3 of it and goes, "What on earth was all that about?" And the rest of them walk out at the end and do exactly the same thing.
And all those people, the people who walk out first have all been silenced because it's brilliant and it's fantastic and it's so visionary. And you just go, I'm sorry, I'm not hearing most of the visionary stuff. It's, after the 14th 3.5-minute sequence in which not a single word is said and we're looking at computers flashing on and off, you just go, no, I'm sorry, this isn't for me. Okay. This is just boredom.
That being said, story points aside, in terms of the practical effects, including things like where he runs around in a great big circle. And
yes. No, I know what you say. I know what you're about to say. That the practical effects were fantastic, and in that regard, they were very influential.
All I'm thinking of is purely from that perspective. I can appreciate it, but I think the film itself was pretty trash when it came to
dull. I think is the word.
Why did I just use an Americanism? Honestly, I should be slayed. Should be impaled by the comments.
Trash. It was complete trash, as they say up on the panhandle.
Tailed, the next time we meet, bring your best knife and stab me in the stomach. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Always there.
Like we're good friends.
Get on with the show, people.
Oh, please never do that.
Do I qualify for Carry On Cowboy now for remake?
I mean, you qualify for a mental asylum, and as a psychologist, naturally, I understand.
Yes, you're the expert in that field.
Mr. Spoon says, when she said Voldemort was a Brexit voter, this is back on J.K. Rowling, when she said Voldemort was a Brexit voter, I could feel my grasp on reality slip further through my fingers. Yeah, totally agree. But at this point, she's so disconnected from reality. So, do you wonder if she's actually seen another human being? Because you don't see much of her sort of media or sort of public appearances, do you? You just wonder if she sits in her mansion on her estate in her 500 acres of land around where she's protected by, I don't know, wild crocodiles or something.
So she's doing a Greta Garbo, is she?
Just tweeting out from the safety of her ivory tower. Reminds me of Nim's Island, actually. Just, dear. J.K. Rowling is irrelevant now. Obviously, a wonderfully influential series of books, but, I mean, that's all they were. And please let us stop pretending that her words hold any weight whatsoever, or anyone pretending that for that.
Well, not as much weight as Hugh Grant's words.
What? What has Hugh Grant said?
Oh, I mean, he was persuading us all which way to vote before the general election, wasn't he?
Oh, that's right. Wasn't he one of the Corbynista types?
Oh, yes, yeah. There was a great many very, very influential actors and other public personas who had all manner of things to say as to which way we should vote.
Oh, yes, I do remember because there were several tweets which went out which listed the number of people who support, the number of high-profile people who support Labour and a number of high-profile celebs who support the Tories, and it's just like, oh, they've got Nigel Farage and Tommy Robinson are urging you to vote Conservative in some constituencies, whereas we've got David Attenborough and Hugh Grant and all these other people. I think there were about 10 or 20 of them. And you just...
You've also got Nick Griffin, who wants you to vote Labour.
Yes, nobody mentions that all of the racists were going, Jeremy Corbyn will do more for our cause than any other leader in British politics today. Yeah. Absolutely horrendous.
Yes, it was a bit of a car crash. I think it was sort of the official death of celebrities having any influence. I think during the Blair years, that was very much alive. Do you remember Cool Britannia and all these celebrities being invited to 10 Downing Street, to have drinks with the Prime Minister, and Oasis were there and whatever. That is officially dead. It was pretty much beaten to death in this general election.
Mm-hmm.
The idea that sort of the Hugh Grants and whatever should have any sort of influence, I think, it's dead.
Yeah, I hope so, certainly. But yeah, I think it certainly for this election, if anything, proves that it didn't really have that much of an effect, or if it did, it wasn't the way that they wanted it to be. Let me see. Deck Tran in chat is saying that, back to Transformers, that Megan Fox got the movie role in Transformers by sleeping with Michael Bay. Apparently they were shagging. But I don't know about that. Now I do have an important question for you, Britisher, whether or not you'd be down for this or not, as several people in our sphere as well seem quite keen to jump on a show of this nature. Architect of Fate says, when does the Red Dwarf review premiere? I expect a full review of every single episode, EFAP style, and Die Hard is a Christmas movie.
Well, I mean, now it's not happening.
Just from that last statement.
Yeah, precisely. It's that last line. You've just destroyed it now. That project is officially dead.
Britisher, I will bring Radical Liberation on, and he will be my co-host for Red Dwarf streams. Don't threaten me with a good time, because we will make this happen.
No, I think, as the official father of this idea, yes, it should be a fun show, but yes, please, not something in which we anally pick over every single line of every single episode. But yes, broad stroke stuff.
We may,
and I think one can have quite a lot of fun with that.
I tell you what, I've put it down. I've made a note in my calendar after the New Year, after the 10th probably, which is when things start to calm down for me. I will have a sit down with people who want to do it, and we'll try and hash out a format for it, because I think it'll need to be a little less free flow than this. If we do, we could do a series, an episode, or something like that. And we could go through it and just see how we feel. And then we'll have homework, Britisher. You'll have homework. You'll have to rewatch the whole thing. What a terrible shame. And be caught up. And we'll see how we can make that work, definitely. I don't know whether or not we'll manage an EFAP style, like 12 hours for one episode, Britisher. Can you imagine? It's like...
yes, it's exactly that sort of thing that I am determined to stay away from.
Every frame of pause.
Yes.
Okay, but that's what I'll say on that one. British Knight says, evening lads, Britisher sounds a bit drunk tonight. Had a bit of a tipple, have we? Laughing face, winky face, Britisher emoji.
No, actually, I haven't had any rum top. That particular episode where I was unable to say anything without stumbling over my own words, I had, what was it, 2 teaspoonfuls, effectively, of rum several hours earlier.
In your ice cream?
So, yes. And this is pretty much how it affects me. So no, today I actually, this reminds me, I had got myself, together with my cup of tea that is here next to me, I had prepared a mince pie that was apparently laced with some brandy, according to Sainsbury's.
Okay.
But I seem to have left it downstairs.
Okay.
Which is most disappointing. So I can't get drunk on mince pies.
You know if there's brandy in a mince pie and the brandy was added prior to it being cooked, you won't be able to get drunk off it anyway.
See, now you're just completely spoiling it. See, I was trying to build up to the effect.
It's not like... Am I going to have to start doing things to your brain jar this week, Britisher? We're going to have to get you
Add
intoxicated.
some brandy to the
I tell you
jar.
what, like, not even that. I have a bottle of blood orange gin here that we could add to various things.
Blood orange gin. Is that sort of the alcoholic version of Iron Brew?
Let me have a look. I mean, it does look like Iron Brew, to a degree. Beefeater London Blood Orange Premium Gin. There you go.
And as I have said before, I am sure, I am convinced that Iron Brew is actually just a clever marketing strategy by GlaxoSmithKline to sell more Lucozade.
Or tasted it then, have you?
You've clearly never... Like, Britisher, allow a soft drink to pass his lips? Surely not. I don't think he's, you subsist almost entirely off tea, Britisher. Neither water, nor alcohol, nor soft drink, nor carbonated soda shall ever pass these lips. Wasn't that what you said to me once upon a time?
Well, you see, it was not for nothing that I was one of the people on board the first tea clipper to deliver tea to Britain.
People, I mean, you even claim that you have a mince pie, but you've actually deliberately left it downstairs so that you can chew tea leaves in the background of this stream.
Of course, yes, just as others would chew tobacco, I'm chewing tea leaves. Yes, of course.
Oh dear! When
it was actually down to me that the entire American Civil War started. Because when the British government of the time actually heard that the Americans, dressed up as Indians, as not to be recognised because they were so brave, started throwing tea into the harbour, the British government just shrugged and went, well, so what? The insurers will deal with it. Whereas it was actually my personal outrage about this crime against humanity that eventually sparked off the entire war.
Just imagining you.
What can I say? I apologise.
I'm just imagining you going to Britain to appeal to the monarchy, just standing there and going, "You remember what I've done for you in the past? Like, you wouldn't have India without me." The Greed the Average just says, "Who owns punter? Who owns all the halls of disrepute? Me. Why, good sir, surely they are Bristol councils. Punter. Ah, so they are Bristols.
Okay.
I'm sorry, Greed.
I'm sure I'll laugh later.
I don't get it. I don't understand it.
Once grass has grown over the memory of
I've lost both
delivery of that particular pun.
Look, I've lost both context. I have no idea what the reference to halls of disrepute is, and I've no idea what the trouble with Bristol is, or if I'm even pronouncing.
Or the plural Bristols.
Yeah, Bristol councils. No. They are Bristols.
No Bristols. But yeah, by all means, moving on.
Moving swiftly on. I'm so sorry. Where were we? A Cooperman Cam says, considering the burka debate, okay, getting into the political territory now, are YouTubers who object to it, presumably object to the burka, but themselves don't show their face, hypocritical? Or are these things not equivocal? So the idea being that if you're hiding behind your avatar of a stern face...
If you're hiding your own face, can you criticise others from hiding their face?
Especially you, Britisher, who hides behind the face of a stern-faced, if kindly, Flashman-esque British soldier, when really he's a 5'2" Pakistani man who was raised in Germany. Of
course, yes.
So
you forgot the half South Korean parentage.
Well, excuse me if the issue of your mixed blood, Britisher, is something that I miss from time to time.
The question is one of what is the objection. So, is it the objection that these people walk around anonymously? Or is the objection that these people behave in a manner that isn't in keeping with the local culture?
I think aside from it being like one thing you can't say about the different avatars on YouTube, for instance, is that they all look the same. For a start, plagiarism aside, it's one of those things where people are both trying to express themselves, but also maintain anonymity in public in private life, compared to YouTube, which becomes their public life, especially if they're successful.
Because nobody is going to try and ruin Mrs. Patel's life if she goes to the bakery without a burka. But people might indeed try and do so with quite a few of us if we hadn't got avatars.
Quite possibly. It like the biggest issue is when it becomes a catch-all sort of thing. It's also the age at which the burqa is applied. So it's like, this is a decision that you can guarantee that we have all made for ourselves. Whereas at 9 years old, women or children are told to wear the burqa. And that's, that's where I have a huge issue with it, because then it is kind of more indoctrination than it is a personal choice. Then there's also the sort of the idea that these people are advocating on the burqa side of the debate that if you don't wear the burqa, you are somehow some kind of moral degenerate, which I don't take to be particularly true either. So that's my big issue with it, primarily.
Well,
I don't think it's a hip.
One of my favourite angles is, of course, that they have to wear the burqa because otherwise we wouldn't be able to keep our hands off them.
Oh, obviously not. In fact, I saw a video on Twitter from a young Muslim London podcast the other day, because that's what I do for fun, ladies and gentlemen. I go out and hunt these things out on Twitter. And there was a chap there, and he was basically talking about how, it's like not just about, single women walking around there for the taking and taunting us with their lithe feminine form, but also from the perspective of, if your wife is going around uncovered, for that matter, then, she's doing you a disservice because she's flaunting herself to all your friends and these strangers in public. And that's obviously not on. So it's...
Well, in that case, I would just like to ask whether Prince Philip feels that Her Majesty the Queen, whenever she goes out in public, is flaunting herself at us.
Well, there was,
but it's a thought, I guess.
Well, it's like that when Angela Merkel visited Saudi the first time, and she didn't cover her hair. She did the second time, but she didn't the first time. And the first time they were on national TV and they blurred her hair.
Yes.
It was like when they're someone had set the privacy filter and just put it slightly too high, and they just blurred her hair. It's crazy to think that level of bizarre personal censorship, as if the sight of Angela Merkel's wavy locks was sending the loins of men a-frothing, across the nation.
Across the entire Middle East.
Across the entire Middle East. Really, really bizarre. So I think YouTubers who object to it, but who have made a decision to in public life wear this thing, as opposed to in private life, to wear this face. And that's not even to mention the fact that many YouTubers are at risk of doxing in a way which the majority of the population are not. And if you become big enough, your face will get revealed anyway, if that really makes sense. Like, as soon as really your audience passes, I would say when you get up there to sort of 500, 600,000 people, it's very, very difficult actually to maintain your anonymity. And just the networking that is required for that kind of level as well means that there are an awful number of people who know who you are. But it tends to be a personal safety thing for politics, whereas I don't think it's so much a safety thing as much as an adherence thing in the Muslim side of it. But there we go. That's that one. Any thoughts, Tailed? Or are you coming down on one side or the other? Or are you just going to now reveal that you're in favour of the niqab?
People can wear what they want as far as I'm concerned. It just means that, we don't sort of trust people that cover their faces. So, yeah, don't trust me.
Someone in chat has just said there are images of Angela Merkel on a nudist beach. Check Google Images. I don't think so.
Well, actually, given that Angela Merkel comes from Eastern Germany, there is a little anecdote I just have to share with you all. And that is that, you know how on the 1st of May in the Soviet Union, they like to have their May parade, in which, lots of troops goose step by, and tanks and rocket launchers and aircraft going overhead and whatever. And of course, in past years, that involved not just the military going by, but when it was more of a sort of a communist exhibition, you also had kind of, workers going by, and perhaps they would pull floats of food, that had been gathered in the harvest, the fruits of communism, so to speak.
From the breadbasket of Europe, yeah.
Of course, yes. And meanwhile, in Eastern Germany, they, of course, had the same thing, but it being Eastern Germany, sort of a communist province, if you will, it obviously wouldn't be quite as bombastic. So they would have some troops going by, they would have a few tanks, and they would have floats, again, with harvest goods, with perhaps some mechanical goods that East Germany produced, and so on. So, the workers' paradise. But as the years went on, Erich Honecker, who was the dictator of Eastern Germany, so to speak, he was an obsessive hunter. The amount of wildlife this man shot in German forests is innumerable. But aside from that, he seemed to also have a different personal interest. Nudism.
Right.
So, I kid you not, at some point started to appear a float in every May Day parade in Eastern Germany that went by with nudists waving to the leader as they went by at a slow tempo. So first you've got the goose-stepping soldiers, then you've got the tanks, then you've got, people walking by carrying banners of Marx and Engels and Lenin and whatever. And then there are some nudists. I mean,
stalkers.
It really...
Were they at the back or the front?
It really is quite difficult to imagine, but yes, truly, this happened, ladies and gentlemen. If you really needed an example of just how gaga the system went in the East, yeah, that's another one. Actually, in fact, when it comes to harvests, there was one particular country that excelled in that, and that was Romania. I'm sure V would back me up on this one. And that is that, harvests in Romania were terrible. The population was increasingly running out of food. But of course, Ceausescu liked appearing on film, meeting the farmers at harvest time, and, the fruits of their country. And there is a famous piece of film in which he is standing in front of, all sorts of vegetables, marrows and peppers and tomatoes, piled high behind him in all sorts of colours. Except, of course, they were all fake.
Oh.
There wasn't a single real piece of fruit or vegetable in them.
All plastic or wood or
yes,
wax.
And all the farmers had to, for the cameras, be shaking hands with him and showing him their big marrow or melon or whatever.
They were showing their marrow or their melons.
Oh, of course, yes, yeah. Go there, why don't you? No, and he was there, congratulating them and applauding and shaking hands with them and smiling and looking very strong and dictatorial. The whole thing was a sham. because yes, once again the crop was terrible. But yes, for the cameras, it needed to be made to look different.
I remember there's a film which came out which was controversial a few years ago now, and it was a Seth Rogen flick called The Interview. Do you remember that one?
I've heard of it. I've not. Wasn't that the one? Was that the one where basically Sony was hacked and they believe it was North Korea?
Yes.
Okay.
And there was also threats to 2 cinemas who were going to show the film, and it ended up having it pulled, and it went direct to a Netflix release because there were too many cinemas were worried that it would literally cause North Korea to attack the West, which it didn't. Funnily enough, I don't know if you've noticed, but there's a scene in that where they're coming into Pyongyang, and there's like this whole array of this whole scene of people moving through the streets, and this little fat kid who's standing on the side of the curb, clearly placed there, whilst the oblivious host is going, I thought that you were all starving, but look, there's this little fat kid, and the tour guide is going, yes, Supreme Leader believes it is a sign of a healthy country to have fat children. And there's like a very westernized looking corner grocery shop, and with all this beautiful fruit and veg in it. And later on in the film, when he's having a bit of a crisis, he ends up escaping from the palace and comes back to the street, where of course it's completely deserted because the whole scene was staged. And he goes into the grocery shop and picks up one of the pieces of fruit. I think it's an orange or something like that, and it's made of foam. And it's completely fake.
Yep.
And he has this rampage moment where he's going, "It's fake!" And it's brilliant. I really like that one. It's a good film, actually. Like, as far as I usually detest anything that Seth Rogen is in, but that film is actually pretty good. I thought it was pretty well done. And if you like to see Kim Jong-un being shot by a tank in his own country and blowing up in a helicopter, then that's something that you want to watch, definitely. As well as his speech about how margaritas aren't gay. So there's that. That's The Interview, yeah. And I enjoyed that one. Joss, I don't know what we were talking about before we were talking about that, but we appear to miss that. Jaws the Great and Powerful says, this person who you're supposed to like doesn't like this person you like, so you shouldn't like them too. That's the general gist, I assume, is coming from the media personality side of things.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And yes, I can agree that most people nowadays, with the prevalence of the internet, do not put as much stock. I think mainly one of the big reasons is we now have access to what celebrities think all of the time. Whereas it used to be one of those things where, let's say, a big band has come out and they've made these songs and everybody loves them, and then they have media appearance where they support some charity and people go, he's a good egg or they're a good egg. Now you have them all on Twitter putting the shit that comes out of their brains on the internet all of the time, and people understand a great deal. I think it humanizes them a lot more, whereas you had... I don't think we have, to the same degree that we used to, cults of personality around celebrities in a similar way, although it could just be that there's more of them now.
Oh, I think we still have cults of personality.
Oh yes, but I just don't think it's to the extent, like, you look at when Queen came to visit London or New York, and
yes. I mean, you won't have mobs of women chasing the Beatles through the streets of London. Yes.
Although you still did see things like that with Justin Bieber, but he was
yeah.
I mean, he was the last one. Of course, they're going to be great, but where people almost have a religious experience because they he touched me.
That's what I was getting at. You only need to mention the name Thomas Sowell to an acquaintance of the three of us, and yes, he basically he falls into raptures, doesn't he? So yeah, there is still sort of the cult of personality.
I'm fairly certain that Mr. Agent called out Thomas Sowell's name whilst he was making his child.
Are you sure it was Sowell and not Hitchens he called out?
It could have been either. Could have been just Thomas. Peter.
You do realise that his back teeth are going to be ground to a fine powder if you don't introduce him to Mr. Hitchens soon.
At some point, well, I don't know. Like, I do like to point out that I have.
Given that you appear to have that contact and he doesn't.
I have his mobile number. Yes. This is something that he doesn't have. But then he's met Douglas Murray and I haven't, so it's kind of one of those catch-22s. I have to offer an exchange, but he'll be like, "Oh, Douglas has got higher cultural capital at the moment, and he'll try and swindle me like some kind of Scrooge figure." But I've got to stay strong. Yeah.
I don't know where to go from there.
Whereas Teal'c has already met his hero, which is obviously you, Britisher, as opposed to.
I wouldn't go to hero status just quite.
Unlike certain other people who've worked with you for longer, have built a meticulous relationship with you over the past year and a half.
It's quite simple. I like Teal'c.
Is this why we work?
Well, I'll take that.
Is this why we work so well together? Because the natural playoff of the fact that actually
you do realise that you walked right.
Yeah. But behind the scenes, we actually can't stand each other.
Of course, yes, yeah.
The difference is I was willing to travel.
Oh, well, excuse. He wouldn't tell me where he lived if I asked him. I said
there is that.
I said let's meet up for a cream tea. And he said, no. No, I don't think so. Oh, so thank you for that.
It was a cream tea.
Well, we have to contrast the different styles. I thought it would be thematically appropriate. I figured that we could record it, blur our visages, and then make it into a video, potentially. But no. The Britisher has no interest in meeting a man half his age. And I'm going for cream tea.
Well, now you see a woman half my age. That's different. But
look,
yeah,
there are some things that I will do for this show. Getting a sex change so that you will meet me is not one of them.
No, that won't work. I assure you, that will not work.
It depends. I think it would be quite cute as a strumpet that goes along.
Oh dear God!
Oh.
This is taking a very, very worrying turn.
Well, I'm just happy that we are nearly an hour into the show, and so there is absolutely no chance of this particular section of it being clipped and then used against us. And that's
of course
that's
not.
Wonderful. No. People send him a drunken text on New Year's Eve. I think they're talking about. Sorry.
I think you've just lost your own train of thought.
No, I haven't. The chat is still talking about people who AA would call out during sex. So it's just like Lumberg is saying, Hans, Herman, I'm almost there. Hopper! Or perhaps he's hate fucking by screaming, Rousseau! Rousseau! I apologise.
You do realise that everybody who has a part in this is going to hell.
I apologise to anyone who doesn't know who the academic agent is and doesn't understand his extreme obsession with various different people, and his dire hatred for Rousseau. It's fantastic. Yeah, I should use, apparently, Britisher, in order to bait you out, I should use Sarah or Poe as bait for you.
I see.
You think that would work?
Not saying.
No, not saying anything.
Poe's husband might say about that.
Well, no, it's just to get him out of his house. That's all it is. And then, as soon as we've got him there, he's not getting away.
That's funny. I managed to get him out of his house, and I'm not even a woman.
No, but you do have those.
Well, it is that.
You have those lovely long locks of hair, Tails, that you are clearly obvious from your.
Yeah,
It was all largely based on a misunderstanding.
He was also wearing a skirt at the time.
Precisely.
That's what I was referring
to. You know when I was
going.
going there, didn't you?
Yes. Oh dear. Well, I was. Yeah. Let's move on, shall we? People say, "Oh, someone's calling someone a coward," and I'm trying to work out why. Red Dwarf and Blackadder are national treasures. You coward. Who has attacked Blackadder and Red Dwarf?
So what has Binary Surfer done now?
Oh, it's not him.
Yes.
It's not him. I can see Mira J in chat as well. Lovely to see you there. People saying have the sex change but leave the mustache. I should just have like fully bearded.
Well, you would stand a good chance at Eurovision.
Yeah, if anything, but you know they never go for the same trick twice, so I think it would actually lower my chances. Jaws the Great and Powerful says, I practically memorized Red Dwarf when I was younger. I'm happy to be on to help. Well, as I say, we'll figure out the format, and then I think it'll be a free for all. We'll try and get certainly a fair few people on for their different lots. The more the merrier, but probably a maximum of about 6, I think. But we'll see how that goes. Yes. And then, irritatingly, there's YouTube is doing this thing at the moment where it cuts off the last super chat, so I have to just dash in here and just say, British Knight says, wait, so the bankers, the gays, the intellectuals, and the farmers are degenerates, but nudists aren't. This says a lot about Soviet dictators, I guess. Britisher?
Well, as I say, I think it's well put. It says a lot about Soviet dictators. It seems to be that one's own vice is always just a matter of being a little human, whereas everybody else's are, unforgivable sins. Because that tends to be the way of the world, doesn't it?
No. I can see where you're coming from, Britisher. I may not always agree with you, but I can see where you're coming from, certainly. The Harry Channel is saying, if I manage to interview David Starkey, I win. So there's that. Yes.
Yes, I think Starkey is one of the sort of high-value face cards. But I think for the ultimate sort of, Trump ace, it would have to be Trump, wouldn't it?
Well, I've only got 1 degree of separation, if that makes if that helps, or 2 degrees.
Well, but that isn't the same as actually interviewing.
I know, but what I'm saying is, like, I could just make this happen because I've got this 1 to 2 degreys of separation.
No, by all means. I mean, we will wait with bated breath for your Donald Trump interview.
Just be like, so why am I being given this interview? Oh, it's like it's basically to own this one guy and this one with this one audience who.
So, Mr. Trump, about the third biscuit question.
Are you aware of this moral conundrum? You've heard of the trolley test, but have you heard of the third biscuit conundrum? It's just. I remember explaining that to Peter Hitchens, and he just, like, you had to approach it with him quite specifically because he doesn't want to be baited into saying something which he considers to be a misrepresentation or something. So I had to fully explain the scenario that, this represents moral degeneracy, and so do you consider the third biscuit to be immoral? And he was just like, I don't think I'm answering that. I don't really care. He's got absolutely no time for really humour in politics for it. But it was just a really bizarre conversation to have. But there we go. That doesn't take me back. I do find it slightly strange. Like 10% of all the views on my channel come from that one interview. I need to up my game and do another one at some point. There we go. And Architect of Fate says, prediction for 2020: NSO becomes the strumpet, which Britisher strums whilst remembering his 20s. Tailed keeps the sex change a secret until after he's done.
That's the beginning of that.
Did I cut out?
Oh, I just wasn't paying attention.
Oh, I see. So it says, prediction for 2020, NSO becomes a strumpet, which Britisher strums whilst remembering his 20s. Teod keeps this sex change a secret until after he's done.
I see.
So that's the idea. It's that I'll have the sex change, Britisher. I won't tell you, and then we'll meet up, and everything will go from there. And Teod will know all along, and then reveal it afterwards. How do you feel about this situation arising?
Well, I'm just, I think it will be a steep challenge for you to turn into the Liz Hurley lookalike, but by all means, give it a go.
It's just like my physique, just sort of like X-Forces, fairly broad.
By the way, am I the only person? Of the trio of us here, have the two of you also enjoyed the, I dare say, immortal BAFTA moment?
BAFTA? I've not been following the BAFTAs.
Yeah. When Liz Hurley, how shall we put it, descended the steps rather vigorously.
Did she fall?
No.
Did she fall out?
And Billy Connolly was he was the host that evening, I believe.
Okay.
And well, how do we say, his facial expression as a reaction of her having, how do we say, skipped down the steps with, how to put it, little support. And when she then, hands up, announces who has won the prize, and then off she goes. And Billy Connolly just has a quiet moment with the audience. Just look it up, folks, once this is over. I assure you it's worth a good laugh.
Fair enough. We'll take your word for it for the time being, but thank you very much for that. People saying there was a flash, apparently.
No, there was no flash.
Okay.
No.
That's good. Right. Greed Avaricious says, we're on the cusp of the neo-20s. I do hope there will be roaring with free trade deal and freedom from the EU. Capitalism ho. Thank you very much. I do want to bring us now on to our the stories that I've lined up for this evening, which are interesting and few and far between. But we have Rebecca Long Bailey outlining her vision for Labour's future. Have you heard anything about this today? Either of you?
The progressive patriotism, or whatever
this
it was.
is progressive patriotism, yes. She wrote in The Guardian, which was a piece called "We Could Take the Labour Party Back into Power, Here's How." And she said she blamed that Labour's election defeat was on its compromise solution on Brexit. Not on anything else, just purely on the compromise solution on Brexit. Which I think was certainly a factor for the North, but I think that a number of the sort of swung constituencies in the South as well were primarily due to Corbyn being at the helm and just his utter contemptibility as leadership material. Anyway, she claims that the policy agenda that they're pursuing is popular. And with, what is it now, 34% of people polled of millennials polled being in favour of, or having a neutral to positive view of communism, up from 22% or something, which it was at the last time they did it, is quite worrying. But she says that she's going to, let me see where it is. I'm trying to find this progressive. Yes, she pledges to champion progressive patriotism, but I think in much the same way that social justice has petered out. Really, like that was kind of the catchphrase for the left of the last decade, but it's not really something that she's taking forward herself. Although I expect it to exist in the social sciences and so on and so forth, and the activist base for a long while yet. But she's clearly taking on progressive patriotism. And she hasn't seemed to click that you also seem to... I realise I'm waffling a bit here, but my point is that the patriotism by itself has one meaning, and as soon as you add a connotation onto the beginning of it, a prefix as it were, you've corrupted the meaning of that word. because you could basically define progressive patriotism to be whatever this new thing is that you want it to be, and it doesn't actually have to bear any resemblance to the thing it originally was, which is much the same with the way racism was redefined to be prejudice plus power, and how social justice was redefined from actual justice and equal treatment under the law and so on and so forth to special protections for people. Does that make sense?
That makes perfect sense. Yes, but by creating progressive patriotism, you create a new term. And by creating the new term, you can effectively, how shall we say, sort of section off a sector of patriotism, of the acceptable patriotism, and basically announce everything else to be the unacceptable patriotism, if you know what I mean. And as far as this particular candidate is concerned, it seems quite clear to me that she is the Corbyn placement. She is more than likely the main reason Corbyn is still desperately hanging on in there and hasn't just left.
Well, she is the favourite because she's McDonnell's candidate, so he's pushing her hard.
Yes. Yeah, so basically, given that we see Corbyn and McDonnell as kind of a duo, this is effectively their, the one they have groomed for power, if you know what I mean. This is the one to succeed them. You listen to all that has been said, and not just from her, also from other candidates in the Labour Party, and you just realise they haven't got a cat in hell's chance because they still haven't realised what went wrong.
Yeah.
So you have got, her analysis is it was Brexit.
Yeah.
It was only Brexit. Actually, all our policies were very popular. It clearly wasn't Corbyn because, I'm his chosen favourite, so it couldn't have been Corbyn.
But it was also,
even though, funnily enough, the reference to progressive patriotism seems to be an acknowledgement that the population at large had a bit of a problem regarding the questionable loyalties of Corbyn.
Yes, there's certainly an attempt now to because Labour is crippled, right? And they're not just crippled in it looks bad for them now, given how many seats that they lost. 54. I think they lost to the Conservatives and 60 overall. But they're actually crippled in a huge number of previously safe seats, which have now become very, very slim majorities. Mm-hmm. And so the idea is that really, if they don't get their act together by the next election, it's quite possible that they'll be looking at a full board wipe anyway, and they'll be down to a similar level to the Liberal Democrats. We have yet to see whether or not that happens, and obviously there's potentially 5 years between then and now, and an awful lot can happen in that time. So you don't like to do it, but they're in a very shaky ground, and they've realised that actually her attempt at progressive patriotism, as Lundberg's just sent in, progressive patriotism equals socialist nationalism, ? Sort of thinking face. And they're trying to bring on board a sense that they do love this country. They don't like what this country has become, but they love this country and they want to see that come back. And I expect that to be a big factor in their politics, trying to appeal to the sentiment that, Britain is a good place to be, or Britain isn't a good place to be at the moment because we don't like these things, but we want to make it a good place to be because we love this country and we always have, even, the usual political
I think it was
tosh.
Pointed out to them more than likely by MPs who lost their seats that the north of England is actually one of the chief recruiting grounds for the army.
Mm-hmm.
And that therefore, if you have a leader who, was friends with Hamas and whatever, and who is constantly deriding Britain, that yes, a patriotic sentiment has got a part to play. And it had a part to play in the defeat of Labour. Because yes, the north of England in that regard is clearly more working class than the south. but it's fairly conservative in its values, in its social values, not in its economic values. But then yes, it is also deeply patriotic.
You'll also notice that amongst all of Labour's proposals, the things that were primarily being pushed and that sort of thing, where like the first point in their manifesto was the environmental policies and so on and so forth, and there was nothing about the military. One of the things which I noticed when I was voting, when I was in the forces, was I would always look out and see what does this party want to do with the forces, because there are a huge number of problems with the forces at the moment, but because it's not a public, in terms of percentage-wise, it's not a public kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? Priority. That's So, and the fact that we have shrunk the military so dramatically from 1997 onwards as well, would hint to me that they're trying to shrink that supporter base as well as much as possible. I would love to see more funding put into the military, but it's difficult to see how it would be effectively applied, given that there are so many ways in which the government has already messed up the way that the military works, and the place, they're so completely clueless. I lost count of the number of meetings that I had to go to, little conferences that you get sent on, especially as a holding officer, where you are basically asked, what's wrong with the employment offer? We feel like we've made it really competitive. What's the problem? How can we make this better? And it's because we have this huge issue with retention. And at the moment, we believe it's because people want to be soldiers, and then they go away, they do one, they're the Call of Duty generation. They go, they do one tour, they feel like they've given back to their country, and then they leave. And we can't work out why. And there are a whole host of reasons why, and that really deserves its own video or its own stream. But it's just, they're so oblivious. They haven't nailed one of them. They're going, our pension plan is so competitive compared to the normal market. What's going on? And you just go, your pension plan has changed 4 times in the last 20 years.
Well, if I can sort of just drag you away from talking about pension plans, which might lose us quite a lot of an audience.
No. I don't want to go too much.
It just when you begun there, you started with the Labour Party had a lot to say about environmental issues. That was pretty much their top priority. That's the thing they were leading with. And you think, well, okay, yes, that works with, the Greta Thunberg generation. But A, most of them can't vote yet. Mm-hmm. Many of them will grow out of it. And B, always consider what was actually the public reception to Extinction Rebellion. Did hundreds of thousands of people, millions of people flock onto the street and join in those protests?
No, everyone was pissed off that they were gluing themselves to trucks.
Precisely. And you've just got the feeling, well, hang on a moment, so that was actually a loser.
Yeah,
I'm convinced that was actually a loser. So they had a leader who lost them votes because a complete charisma vacuum and, of course, enormous amount of political baggage with Jeremy Corbyn. Mm-hmm. Then, as I say, I think that the Green agenda was a complete loser. Then you have, their sort of astronomical policies. Everything was just borrowed. Everything was just based on borrowing. Mm-hmm. And you kind of looked at it and you just went, "Oh, this is catastrophic." Very large tax rises, borrowing that would just go through the roof and would more than likely turn into a massive problem no sooner than international interest rates change. You look at these things, then you look at Brexit, and you just go, oh my God, so you once again completely on the wrong side here. So you look at it, and this is where I feel Labour has got the problem, because they haven't got a candidate who is standing up and saying, okay, folks, we were wrong across the board.
Yeah. They need to hit the reset button. But
you've got basically a person who belongs to one faction or the other faction or this faction, and they're all trying to sort of sort of pick and mix their, oh, well, it was Jeremy. Oh, no, it was Brexit. Oh, no, it was the non-Blairite policies, and you just go, no, folks, this is not.
Like
you don't seem to realize that you have been rejected wholesale by the populace here.
And it's not to mention, like, if you take just the green stuff as well, what are the things which are going to get hit most by green policy? It's going to be things like fuel tax is going to rise because they want everyone to move to sort of electric vehicles and whatnot. But electric technology certainly hasn't moved on for bigger jobs. Who are the people who make up the majority of sort of the working jobs on the road? That's the working classes who Labour claim to support, but really are the ones who would be shafted by that. What's one of the biggest sports in the UK? Motorsport. And who are the primary audience for motorsport? It's typically the working classes.
Most of the Formula One teams are based in Britain.
Indeed. So it's, you're shafting people who, like, in the workplace and in the things that they enjoy. And it's complete, how they ever thought they'd get it through. But it's very weird for me because, obviously, I work in an environment at the moment which is quite heavily weighted in favour of the left and people who are very concerned. And there's about recycling and reusing things and all that jazz, or at least they pay lip service to it. There are several people I know who have Extinction Rebellion stickers on their phone and so on and so forth. And there's a chap who I won't name for posterity, but he was saying to me at one point, and he was going, Extinction Rebellion are across the road. They had a demonstration at my university. And I said, okay, well, these idiots are there. And he said, idiots? He said, I haven't heard anyone called them idiots before. He said, they're fighting for a greener, better world, and actually things are going to go really downhill. Fully buys into the apocalyptic predictions, by the way, because he believes that feedback loops will start happening after a while, and it will get out of our control, and really things will get a lot worse. He's also an interesting nihilist because he thinks that humanity deserves everything it gets, but then he is South African and he was there at apartheid. But to get back on point, he's going, I said, look, these people are trying to raise awareness about climate issues, and the way that they're doing that is by pissing off as many people as physically possible. The elite, as it were, are already relatively on side, or certainly the intellectual intelligentsia, I should say, rather than intellectual elite. The intelligentsia are, so the kind of social elite are, even if the business elite are not at the moment. And the people that you're trying to convince are the regular people, because they're going to put pressure on the business elite to change things. And they're not doing that at the moment. Or they are making changes, but they're not doing it as fast as you'd like. And at the moment, all you're doing is pissing them off. And he goes, well, at least they're doing something. And that seems to be the predominant attitude when the left does something which everyone hates. It's at least they were trying to do something. At least their heart is in the right place. It's like, but if it's having the opposite effect to the effect that you want to have, and the the actual consequences of their actions are a negative,
well, I mean,
what's the point?
Well, when Nero fiddled while Rome burned, at least he was doing something.
At least he was doing something. And I hate this phrase, but he seems to be... He's a very good chap. It's very hard to argue with him sometimes, because he does read an awful lot of the scientific literature. But it's also very difficult to... Like, he gets himself caught in these ideas. But I think an awful lot of people do get this into their head, that the cause is greater than the actions taken to further that cause, even if most of those actions are negative. I find it horrendous. Anyway. That was we started talking about Labour and how they should come back, or what they would have to do in order to come back, not whether or not necessarily we want them to.
Well, let's put it like this. It just if I just can.
No.
I mean, we have we have this fantasy by AA and his followers. Oh, if only we could have a contest between the Whigs and the Conservatives. I just think so. What you're basically saying is you would like you would like the contest, the political context, to be between two differing wings of the present-day Conservative Party. That's not going to happen, and you need an opposition. So you may not necessarily want the opposition to win, but you need an opposition, folks. And for all those people who are, incredibly glad to see Labour kind of, prostrate after these elections, yes, it's satisfying to know that people who were that daft and that stupid ended up flat on their faces. But in the end, we need an opposition, because governments who have no effective oppositions can go seriously awry. And there is nothing to suggest that this government would in any way be immune from that. And therefore, it is imperative that whether it's the Labour Party or it's somebody else, but it will be someone of the left, because, let's be realistic here. But it's important that they get their act together and pose some sort of significant threat. Because, how shall we say, I think Farage has demonstrated beautifully, you don't need to be the one who actually holds power. If only you affect sufficient a threat, you can move the government to a more sensible position. And I think that is very much necessary. Something to keep the government in check. Just so they don't get too cocky.
The way I look at it is that it used to be and I admit that this statement is a little bit woolly. It used to be that the media was supposed to hold the government to account. That was the general idea, and the pressure groups and so on had some limited influence, but really people got the government got its grilling from the media, and people absorbed all the media, and when media was much more limited, this seemed to work fairly well. And now that media has branched out so that everyone and anyone can be a media platform and a tour de force in their own right, it seems to have, and then influence a large number of people, it seems to have gone straight back to pressure groups and lobby groups and so on and so forth.
Well, when it comes to the media are effectively the ones who let the people know what's happening. And then the people are the ones who then have the choice of whether they still want to back the group of idiots who are in charge of the government, or whether they prefer the other group of idiots who are sitting on the opposition benches. So first the media needs to actually inform the public, and then the public will make up its mind as to which one of these two football teams it supports.
Mm-hmm.
And, the ones who have won Best in Show at the Blue Fair or the Red Fair. But as such, it still always boils down to there must be a credible alternative. Because if there is no credible alternative, then no matter how many times the government screws up, the public, no matter how many times they're told by the media that once again the government has produced an enormous amount of gumph, they will say, well, no, we'll vote them in again because, well, the others are just not an option. And therefore, the government is then at liberty to do what it wants. Like that, it can keep the poll tax for years in Scotland, which has damaged the United Kingdom for a matter of generations. And you look at that and you just go, well, yes, so, if there would have been a serious opposition, if the Conservative Party of the day would have been kept in check by a Labour Party that might come to power if we do something daft, if we take ridiculous risks, well, then we best not introduce this idea that we like so much. That sort of thing. That's why you need an opposition. Whether you actually agree with that particular side of politics or not, there needs to be somebody there that makes sure that the government stays A, honest, and B, sensible.
The chat is saying the opposition is supposed to be the loyal opposition.
Yes, there is that. Yes, granted.
I'd also like to welcome Nakaleve onto the stream. Evening.
Oh, never. Don't welcome me.
Don't
welcome me. Like, I'm not worth it. Also, I was listening, and I sent that message to you on Twitter, and I'm like, oh, they're talking about serious stuff. And I've been ill since Christmas, and I was like, you know what? I'm feeling a bit better. I've got a few drinks. Oh, that's my boy Ov. Let me pop on. Let's have some bants. And it's like, oh god, they're talking about shit. Seriously, thinking it matters. Oh god, help.
We did like the first hour or so was banter, and then we just switched to like.
I was about to say, and I'm like, oh god, because I knew Tailed was on, and Tailed's a good laugh, but fucking, and I'm just like, I never heard him say a single word when I was waiting for you to respond, and I'm like, what hole did I just jump in?
Oh dear.
Because they're talking about serious stuff, I just stopped talking.
Yeah, I know. And I mean, what? It's great when all these English cunts being all, oh, I'm sorry.
You're fine. Just carry on.
It literally told me, he's like, watch it.
It was like, entire life.
It was like, you're welcome to come on. He's like, be careful of the profanity, and it's, you know, we use that word like a comma, but it's just like, how depressing is it hearing all the English and all that just sounding all hopeful, you know, when we've got Sturgeon.
Tail.
You know?
There is that.
Sturgeon.
Tail.
But
It's just
what is it actually? I mean, how is it that you see it? How is it that the nationalists so dominate the scene up there? I mean, why?
They aren't nationalists.
Labour and
they
why
aren't nationalists.
Not?
She literally regrets having nationalist in the name. She's a fucking arsehole. She was in my cafe no less than 2 months ago. My family's cafe, she was in there. Like, on that stream, the election stream with Sargon. Like, fucking, I showed Sargon for a laugh a picture of my brother, like, putting his hand up, like, waving to my mother, who put this picture on Facebook, and it looks like my brother's doing a Hitler salute, and she's standing in our family's cafe next to Nicola Sturgeon. And it's just like, oh, I hate that bitch. I wasn't allowed to go down because they knew there would be trouble.
Oh dear. And so what you're saying is your family had the opportunity to poison Nicola Sturgeon, and they didn't take it.
Let's no joke about that. We've got serious fucking shit for her just being
going back to what Britisher was asking about, you know, why are they so dominant? It's because, well, my theory anyway is that there's no one else to vote for. So the people that are actually against the SNP just don't vote for anybody. I think they're just not interested.
So is the turnout very low?
Relatively.
So is the general idea that 45% of Scotland does still want to secede anyway, and
it's probably less than that now.
Possibly, but like let's go with that. Then, if you've got the other parties up there, the Conservatives are the English, Labour are the English, but have also let Scotland down recently, and then you have the SNP, who are known as Yellow Tories, but at least they're Scottish.
Everybody in my immediate family voted SNP. My dad voted Labour. Ooh. And then I just saw my dad yesterday. I went to go visit him and my wee brother after Christmas the other day, and I just sat there showing him all the stuff like Corbyn supporting Venezuela, like the nightmares of Venezuela, the nightmares of socialism, everything that Corbyn and the rest of them were saying. And my dad, who is a stubborn bad person, he basically said, I think I was wrong voting for Labour, and I'm like, do you think, Dad? Do you think? Oh. But let's be honest, Tail, the only reason they vote the only reason they vote SNP is because it's Scotland in the name.
Yeah, but the actual...
But talk about turnouts and stuff like that. Like, I mean, even the Brexit, the EU referendum, Scotland was like the lowest turnout out of the whole UK. It was something. It was, you know, most places in England and Wales were, you know, sort of 85% kind of turnouts and all that, and in Scotland it was about 75%.
Okay.
I almost wasn't going to vote, because I was like, what's the point? We all knew SNP was just going to dominate no matter what.
I think, as chat's saying, SNP comes across simply as the anti-English vote. Like, what other parties do you have up there where the representatives are actually, they speak with an actual Scottish accent, I guess, aside from independents?
In Scotland, it was always either SNP and minority Labour.
Ugh.
That's all it ever was.
Well, yes, but when you look at the situation with, before Ed Miliband, because Ed Miliband was the one who lost all the seats in Scotland. Prior to that, Scotland was always this, red stronghold. And this time around, in this election, so not really that many elections away from Ed Miliband's election, Labour has lost the last seat in Glasgow. So, if you would have, 10, 20 years ago be talking of the fact of Labour not having a single seat in Glasgow, people would have laughed at you.
Well, again, the example I gave of my dad, it's just, I think it was he hadn't caught up yet with just how bad Labour is now. And sorry, Tilt, on you go.
I was going to say that the other thing was Labour had already lost their majority in the Holyrood elections by about 2010 or something like that. The SNP have had, well, they've not had majorities, but you know what I mean. They've outnumbered Labour quite considerably since then. So it has been a slow burn, I suppose.
One of the questions I guess worth asking is, was it Blair? Did Blair poison the Labour brand in Scotland?
I don't know. I was too young.
The reason I ask it is because Thatcher did so for the Tories in Scotland, and ever since then, there's just been serious resentment against the Tory party in Scotland.
Again, my position's kind of similar to Tailed, where again I was too young to really have an opinion about what was happening there at the time. But when I was showing my dad a bunch of the stuff like yesterday about because he was asking me, why did Labour lose and what's wrong with Labour and whatnot, and then I showed him, and it's like Blair did all these things, and my dad's like, oh god, I didn't really realise and whatnot. And
I feel like Tony Blair as well, because they seceded a number of powers when it was clear they were losing Scotland. They decided that they would devolve more powers to Scotland to try and keep them on side, and really all that ended up doing was empowering their opponents.
Tailed, on the lead up to the general election, somebody showed me a video, and they're like, oh well, look at this, where it was a podcast called The Orange Boys, which was a Rangers-themed podcast.
Okay.
Would never guess.
Yeah, talking about the old firm, and they're like, the Orange Boys have got to unite, and we've got to stand against the SNP because they're going to destroy Scotland. And they most everybody I know and comes from a Celtic supporting background, because I'm glad that I've lived to the ripe old age of 30 and we're still going on about the old firm, and I don't think we will ever be over that in my lifetime.
Having been brought up in the East Coast, we never had to deal with that at all. And since I hate football, I've never had any interest in it.
I hate football as well.
I only know stuff about the old firm kind of stuff and the Catholics versus Protestant, all that kind of stuff, relatively recently, just because I just never heard about it over here at all.
Well, that actually begs the question, given that I mentioned Iron Brew earlier. Is Iron Brew produced by a company that would be on the Rangers side?
Because it's orange.
Just a bit, yes, just a tad.
You may have noticed in some of their marketing campaigns that the drink is in fact orange.
It would be thematic, since Rangers is currently absolutely shit. They are the Rangers because of the colossal destruction of them. They did just win, which was I was wondering
kind of
because
undermines your point a little bit there, doesn't it?
No. Brought back the old recipe, so it's obviously connected.
When I was heading to my father's, I was listening to the radio, and that was the first game they've won, I think, either against Celtic or against Celtic on home ground in 19 games.
Nice.
Or it's the first time they've beat them in 90 games and they won 2-1.
I think their first achievement was even to be able to play Celtic again.
Oh,
So,
no, what?
For years and years, they were that out of it that they were sort of climbing up the lower leagues to even get to the point where they could play Celtic again. Then they were just routinely beaten by Celtic, and now finally, for the first time, they've actually won a match.
Yeah. No, because my father came to pick me up with my wee brother, and we were listening to the radio on the way there, and he's like, I want to hear it because I want to hear the call-ins. And we heard two people call in that were Rangers supporters, and then they were like, oh, this guy's got some words to say and whatnot. But then I was like, I just want to hear somebody come on and saying, get it around you bunch of words I can't say because I need to be polite. But the thing is, they never had anybody else on the entire drive because clearly they couldn't get anybody on that was going to say anything that was fit for radio because it was such an upset.
Oh my!
But I mean, just in order to bring that part of the audience that perhaps is not completely up to speed on the intricacies of Scottish football,
the old firm.
Say it properly, Britisher. Split butt.
The old firm is effectively the matches between Celtic Glasgow and Glasgow Rangers, who tend to be the two largest clubs in Scotland. But Glasgow Rangers, some years ago, I believe they won 7 titles in a row, wasn't it? But it was because they were spending incredible amounts on players, much more so than they can actually afford. So they decided to win all the trophies and then simply declare themselves bankrupt in order to write off all their debt and start over again. And it was then, effectively to their surprise, that they were told by the Scottish Football League that in that case they were no longer the same club and could start at the very bottom of the league and qualify their way up again.
They aren't Rangers anymore, though. They're Rangers. That's what it is. They can't call themselves Rangers anymore. They are the Rangers.
That club officially is no longer in business, so they needed to slightly change the name.
Again, yes. I need to clarify. I am not. I haven't cared about football since Henrik Larsson left Celtic. That was when I stopped caring about Celtic. Larsson was my hero as a child. That was a very long time ago.
But effectively, the end result was that then Celtic just won everything, didn't they?
Oh, no,
Rangers were gone.
The Rangers were just garbage. They were absolutely useless, which is why they've been dominating them for so long, which is why this is such a major upset. Because I was wondering, because when I was popping in to see my family, and I'm like, I said, because I get home and my mother was like, oh, where were you? I was yelling up to you and there was no response. And I was like, wasn't here? I was fucking going to visit my dad for Christmas, like I said. And she was like, and I went, oh, that's right, because when I went in to tell you, my brother was screaming at me. He's like, shut the fuck up, get the fuck out of the room. Oh, fuck, swearing. But, because Celtic get pumped by Rangers. And it's like, good. Honestly, good. I don't give a fuck if everybody I know supports Celtic. The fact of the matter is, why would you care about a sport where you always win?
Yeah, okay.
Why would you care if your team just always won? It's the most boring thing in the world. If you just dominate your arch rival every time.
I mean, when it comes to the old firm, they tend to always win, just not against each other. I think that's a fair way of putting it, isn't it? I mean, it's not as if really the Edinburgh clubs or Aberdeen or whatever stand a great chance against the old firm.
It's terrifying, the power of the old firm, by the way. My dad said, as he was coming to pick me up, he said, I saw a guy in a Rangers scarf and he looked the smuggest piece of shit, naughty man. And my dad was like, oh God, they must have won.
Oh dear. All right.
Sorry, but before we drop this, put it this way. See, when I went to America, for the Mines conference and whatnot, when I was there for 3 weeks, one of our Uber drivers was this like full-on black American guy that was driving us, and he's like, "Oh, you from Glasgow, eh?" And he's like, "You know about the Old Firm?" Because he was really into football and he loved the Celtic and Rangers stuff. And I'm like, "I'm sorry, you've got a Glaswegian here, but you've picked the wrong Glaswegian. I don't give a shit."
First off, imagine my shock that you were in America. But aside from that, when the American addressed
Bit
you
racist,
and
British.
spoke of the Old Firm, did he refer to the Old Firm in Glasgow?
Yeah.
Of course. But please, when I said imagine my shock, it was the fact that you could indeed exist over there. Because obviously in real life, you don't come with subtitles. And something tells me the Americans would have a little bit of a problem with
more
you.
and more, the British are
Mate, I did amazing in America. I bought a 20-pack of Marlboros because my e-cig broke, and I'm like, well, bugger this. I'm not buying a new one here with this Yankee money. It's a scam. I bought a 20-pack of Marlboros. I sold 15 cigarettes to just black people on the streets of Baltimore for $1 each. And there you go, $15 for God. I mean, how much is a pack of fucking
$15 a day? That's really impressive.
No. 50. Sorry, but I mean, I bought a pack of cigarettes and I sold the majority of them.
What were you doing walking around Baltimore? Was it selling cigarettes?
Well, following Aiden, fucking whatever she was dragging us.
I have no idea. All right, gentlemen.
It's just a strange pastime to be doing on your holidays in America.
Well, the thing is, somebody came up and asked to borrow a cigarette, and then a white guy came up. A black guy came up to ask to borrow a cigarette, and I'm like, of course, no bother. And then a white guy came up and says, "I'll pay you $1 for a cigarette," and no bother. And then another black guy came up and says, "I'll give you $1 for a cigarette," and I'm like, what is going on?
This is just Chat says. This is just a Scottish man discovers capitalism for the first time.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I love capitalism. I love what people do.
You've heard of Adam Smith, yeah?
Yeah. Oh God. What again? Like Japan? What happened when Japan opened this borders? That was the Scottish guy. What was his name? When they went to Japan, the guy that fucking opened the borders like that. That dude was Scottish. Tails, you must know this.
Was that?
The person that how Japan was closed off to the rest of the world, and then the first trader that ever properly established trade routes with Japan, was a Scottish guy.
Your Mars friend, Tails.
Well, I think there were several times in which Japan were effectively opened up. I think the last time round was effectively the Americans arrived.
The main one that did it, the main one that started it, Scottish guy. Look it up. I'm not wrong.
Well,
chat back.
Google squad, go for it. I have to catch us up with the super chats, guys, because otherwise we'll get too far.
Sorry.
I do just want to highlight one message from chat as well, which says there's more pandas in Scotland than there are Labour MPs. But the new IKB, you right there, Bridget. The new, we've broken him, marvelous.
Pretty old joke now.
I thought pandas was old slang for beating wives.
I don't know where you grew up, man.
Wives in Scotland,
but the new
Glasgow.
There you go. The new IKB says, can we find some way to get Corbyn done for treason? Also, since a Catholic cannot be monarch, can we have it so that a communist can never be PM? It's a thought. Could we get Corbyn done for treason? Has he done anything treasonous? Like, overtly treasonous?
No. The question is what he did in the past regarding speaking to Sinn Féin and the IRA. It's all a bit murky. We don't quite know how, to what extent he was talking to them. When it comes to the debating with, in inverted commas, the enemy when it comes to the EU and the Brexit shenanigans we've seen over the last 2 years, it tended to be other MPs. I don't think it was Corbyn who was going over to the EU talking to them.
No, he's always been a Europhobe rather than a Europhile.
I can sum this up. Like, I know why Corbyn hates the EU. Like, secretly hates the EU. It's just like, you know how when you've got that girl you really want, and there's just this guy that fucks her harder than you do. That's where Jeremy Corbyn is. He's being cucked by the EU. He wants to fuck our country harder than the EU is currently doing.
If we get folded into the EU superstate, it'll give him no room in order to turn Britain into his communist utopia. So it just doesn't work that way.
That's what it is.
We were saying maybe not treason. How about sedition?
Oh, Maduro! I wish I could do to our country like the wonders of socialism.
I think it would be far more Nicola Sturgeon that would be up for sedition charges than Jeremy Corbyn, wouldn't it?
I mean, if you consider sedition itself to be that much.
I was about to say some stuff that was about to get me arrested.
Oh, really?
At least an
£800 fine. Is that what you're saying?
No, I think I'd get arrested. Put it this way: there was a reason I wasn't allowed to go to the family cafe on the day.
Oh, I see. Because you'd have gone.
Photo shoot.
Hello, just time for a chat.
Hello, hi there, Nicola. I have an opinion.
People were saying,
"I have secret police."
People were saying that a chap called Commodore Perry opened up Japan. He was an American. So
that's lies. So fuck off.
No, I was going to say that was the chap who arrived with the fleet. The US fleet arrived at some point and basically forced them to open up. I think this was largely due to the fact that stranded sailors and whatever were just being killed by the Japanese.
All right, well, I might be wrong about who did it first or whatever, but does anybody know about the Scottish guy I'm talking about?
Somebody find out. We'll
the straight-up answer is no, I don't. But I wouldn't at all be surprised if there was some Scottish chap.
You know what? I'm going to mute myself.
The Scots were quite enterprising when it came to the British Empire.
All right, talk about something big brain while I'm doing something retarded.
When it comes to Japan, the first Europeans to get there would have been the Spaniards and the Portuguese. So I think they already had some sort of understanding with the Japanese and therefore opened them up to an extent. So I think, when the samurai started changing to the point where, sort of guns and muskets were basically being introduced, I think that was largely due to the fact that the Spaniards had obviously arrived with cannons and muskets.
Very, very civil conversation, wasn't it?
There was sort of various times in which the Japanese, a bit like the Chinese, who kind of closed themselves off to the rest of the world because they were the Middle Kingdom and the only thing that mattered. The Japanese did the same thing, but I think there were sort of various attempts by people to get in.
Richard, I'm going to cut you off there. Chat seems to think it's a chap called Thomas Glover or Glover.
It is. I'm literally reading up about it right now. It is Thomas Glover. That is exactly the guy I was talking about. He helped overthrow the shogunate and helped modernise the country.
So he went to Japan and produced the original lethal weapon before the remakes.
Yeah, basically he helped modernise the country and whatnot. That dude did big shit in Japan. Fucking goddamn it, give us some fucking credit for shit. English and American bastards.
Look,
fuck the both of you.
Look, just because you did one little thing in one little country in one little part of the world doesn't mean that you can really.
You still.
No, I do remember.
Also, Britisher, I got your joke.
Yep. Thank you. I do remember seeing something once about some sort of Scottish influence in Japan, whereby I think there was somewhere in some port or whatever, they showed some sort of ancient bollard or something like that. So, that was actually still had, the iron foundry from Scotland imprinted on it, if you know what I mean. So I think there was some connection with some.
It was probably Glover. Glover's a big deal, with the influence he had in the way Japan.
Did he have some influence on sort of industrialization and shipbuilding and stuff like that? I might be completely misremembering, but I think that was his territory.
It's been years since I looked it up, but Yeah, like, he was one of the first people to really pop in there, and he was one of the main people. Because when you see stuff with Japan around that time, when they were getting more modern and stuff like that, he was one of the biggest players in that stuff.
Chat says, "We'll trade haggis for katanas."
I would trade haggis for katanas. By the way, I've only eaten haggis once in my life. By the way, put it this way: Christmas dinner that I had with my family, I ate black pudding for the first time.
For the first time? Oh, savage.
I'm not really picky.
Just moving to my disconnect button. I'm sorry, Nug, but goodbye. No.
While you're doing that, wasn't there also some? I think he was English. I think there was some lord. So this was a member of the aristocracy who had some knowledge of aircraft and particularly aircraft carriers. And he basically went over to Japan and helped them set up aircraft carriers. I think this was during the time when Japan was seen as an ally of the British. But then obviously as things started cooling between the British and the Japanese, they basically recalled him, only to then realize that he was so invested in the project that he was actually still helping them out, when by that time it was then treasonous. And as far as I know, it was kind of all swept under the carpet. He was effectively told, you shut up now and stay out of the way, or else something might happen to you. But they didn't go public because they didn't want to, they didn't want to embarrass the establishment by effectively outing a member of the aristocracy at a time when, one wanted to build up national fervour and patriotism in preparation for the war, if you know what I mean. I'm not even sure whether the war was actually already going at that time. But yes, this guy really continued supplying secrets to the Japanese because somehow he saw the Japanese carrier fleet as his baby.
How often do you come on this podcast?
Sorry?
I said,
I'm on relatively often. How?
So I say, they just go off on really English sort of talks, and I'm just like, wow, this has gone right over my head.
What do you expect from a guy called the Britisher?
In what way? Now, I'm sorry, I must insist here. In what way is it English to talk about some member of the English aristocracy helping with carrier fleets, as opposed to a Scotsman going over there and helping them with their modernisation and
No, mate, fuck you. You're like, here you go. The country's own citizens were not permitted to travel outside of Japan on pain of death under shogunate control, but Glover, utilising his trading networks, managed to organise educational trips to Britain and Europe for elite samurai youths, which included visits to Glasgow, a bustling hub of heavy engineering.
They were welcomed with glasses in hand.
Yeah, they probably were. Glasgow people are the most friendly people in the world, but if you fuck us, fuck you.
They went to Glasgow to learn how to chib people, is what you're saying.
Yeah. Fucking samurais cut people.
They've only been drinking rice wine this entire time, but they introduced Buckfast and it completely screwed the Japanese over, and they couldn't control their borders anymore.
Samurais learn the art of how to cut, and nobody knows how to cut like the Glaswegians. We know how to cut you. Don't worry. We'll show you how to get it done.
Yeah.
Oh.
No, but so those blades, how many times is the metal folded?
It's a good reference, Britisher. Moving back on, Greed says, if Labour implodes, our opposition will have become one party with 4% of the vote and 48 seats, with another 2% of the vote and no seats, versus a government that has 44% of the vote and 365 seats. Because the opposition will...
first past the post, isn't it?
But the opposition will have become the SNP, in effect.
Yes.
So thanks for that, Greed. Marcus 10 has contributed the most...
The loyal opposition would have become the SNP.
Yes. Marcus 10 has contributed the most intellectual of Super Chats this evening, and says, Nicola's minge smells like lonely farts.
Up.
So that's that. And we've just had one come in from Hinchster, who says, Merry New Year's Eve. Have a drink on me. Thanks for the stream. And he sent in £20. So thank you ever so much for that. That's very generous.
Yeah, I did notice that with the tweet, and I'm like, it's not New Year's Eve, and I'm like, am I that drunk? Is it New Year's Eve? And I'm like, I'm pretty sure there's 31 days in the month. Like, what's happening?
I did notice, what was it, that today I've been more tired than usual, and I'm going, oh yeah, I quit smoking, and the lack of nicotine in my body is causing issues. So it's like, oh dear.
Get a vape. Come on, start vaping. You know that's modern and trendy. You know, it's not that old British sensibility. Get it done.
No. I think that's the same thing.
Get it done.
I'm not gonna smoke strawberries and cream smoke.
No, I don't do that. Like, the only one I smoke is menthol, but like it's. Do you want to know why I did it? It's because it's cheap.
It's a lot cheaper, is it?
Yeah, like the SNP fucked everything with the booze. And by the way, at this point, I'm going to say fuck.
Yeah. Go for it. Well, it's too late now. Anyway, it's fine.
I apologise. It's just in my nature. And again, I'm sick, and I've been drinking to hide the pain.
It's like it doesn't make you get better sooner, but you forget that you're sick, and time passes quicker.
Yeah.
Go on.
No, but look. What's it called? Freaking like the price of cigarettes is unbelievable, and all this crap with the vaping things where people are getting imported crap, they smoke it, where they're and the fucking idiots that are like vaping cum or whatever. Well, we've all seen that green text, but all jokes aside, it's just like people do things all like we need to regulate the vapes, and it's just like, oh fuck off. It's like we've found free chemicals that might kill you and things, as opposed to like the 50 other things in cigarettes that'll do you. Fuck off.
Oh yeah,
like, don't get me wrong.
Like I'd advocate it for people who are trying to quit and don't have, I don't particularly have. I've never been a heavy smoker, so it's not really that much of a problem for me to quit.
I don't want to quit,
but
I don't want to quit.
Yeah.
I have an insanely addictive personality.
But
I drink and smoke like a mofo.
I mean, you are playing into the stereotype of your people there a little bit. So.
Tail's a fucking fine boy.
Did I accuse Tail? Tail is like the black sheep of the Scottish family who just
don't associate him with me.
No. I don't know if you should be insulted by that, Tail.
All you in the chat and the people doing your super chats, feel free to shit on me. I turn up and I say whatever I feel like, and I'm retarded, and I deserve your ire and hatred. But I appreciate it.
I'm glad to see your self-esteem is as high as it's ever been, Naka. Cheers.
What? No. Look, the fact that I'm internet marmite. People either love me or hate me, and that's just what it is. Yeah. People either I agree with that fucking waste of space, or it's just like that dude's a waste of space, and it's one of the two.
Yeah. I don't mind the vaping as much as it I feel like you vape a lot more just because it's like an unlimited cigarette, if that makes sense.
I'm surprised I haven't died of nicotine poisoning, to be honest. Like I'm on like 18% and I've never got this thing in my fucking mouth.
Fair enough. The last story I want to bring us on to for this evening, because we're just passing the 2-hour mark and can't stay, unfortunately, too much longer. But here's a story which some of you may have heard of today. In fact, it's quite, I think it's maybe 5 hours ago or so it dropped, which is about a chap called Professor Brian Thwaites, Sir Brian Thwaites, I should say, who has decided that he wants to leave £1 million to offer scholarships to disadvantaged white men, or boys, I should say.
I saw this, and it get denied.
And they've been denied by Winchester and Dulwich colleges, so they're private schools. They both declined the offer, worth over £1 million, by a former pupil from both. So it's not that he's offered these to random colleges; it's that he came from them and he wants to, and he's clearly done his research because he's pointed out that white boys from disadvantaged backgrounds perform worse at school than any other counterpart at the moment, especially from other ethnic groups.
Oh, well, that's racist.
And the schools have said they do not want to put ethnic restrictions on who can benefit from financial help,
Yes!
However, the article does also go on to mention that the Equality Act of 2010 is being applied at these places. And so Sir Brian told the Times newspaper that this is why he wanted to make a leading education available to others. The institutions are wrong to reject his offer on the basis that it was based on race. It's based on this grouping that these are the worst people performing in education. Only a third of white disadvantaged. Let me see what it is. The college's ambition is for. Sorry, this is. I'm just reading a statement here. Where it goes. I'm trying to find this one particular statistic where it says, in England's education system, how you do in GCSEs shapes your life's chances. They're the gateway to all the other stuff. 40% of all boys get a strong pass of grade 5 or above in maths and English, which is 7% lower than girls. And 1/3 of poor children from white British backgrounds pass their math and English GCSEs. And that's a C grade for a passing grade. As far as I'm concerned. Or maybe it is referring to sort of D's as well. So only 1/3 of them pass. So he wants to put money into these places for it to be made up. But it doesn't. They've been rejected because it's racial. The Trevor Phillips, the former chair of the Equality and Human Rights Commission, said the Equality Act of 2010 was not designed to favour people of colour, but to ensure equality. And said that he told the Times actually that Sir Brian's proposal showed he wanted to do the right things by families who need support. So he is in favour of this. But you'll notice that there was no controversy when Stormzy announced that he would fund 2 black British students to go to Cambridge, for instance. And the college's ambition for the colleges that Sir Brian actually offered the money to claim that their ambition is for 50% of their pupils to be in receipt of scholarship fee relief or through a bursary.
Is Stormzy that rapper, that English rapper?
Oh yeah, the guy who said that the UK is 100% racist.
By the way, I saw Sorgon's video about that and whatnot, talking about where he came from and whatnot, where he was talking about how Britain did objectively good for the thing and they were just shit to begin with their slavery and whatnot. Is that true?
Sorry, say again.
The slavery and whatnot that they were already doing and stuff like that, and when Britain came in, they just joined in to partake in a trade they were already doing. And
yeah. Who was it? I can't remember who was the leader of which particular nation who begged the British Empire not to stop the slave trade in his country because
I think that was in Africa.
Yeah, in Africa, because it was a jewel of their country or something like that.
I don't want to say anything about that because it's so long and I've got so much to say about that and it would be very nasty. Another thing before I forget though, before we jump into that, just as a question, whatever happened to Milo's privilege grant?
I don't know. Let me see if I can look this up. Because just clue chat into what that was.
Also, I was going to say, Tailed Britisher, do you recall the Milo privilege grant?
I recall hearing about it recently. Somebody mentioned it on Twitter, that apparently it's been wound up.
Oh, wound down. And it was March last year. It was the last article on it.
And there is some there is some there are some questions about who was actually in receipt of this and whatever. Milo, I believe, says that the money did go to some recipients. And what is it? I think he sort of said that whoever the authority is that oversees this and whatever seemed to be okay with it, or that isn't.
Do you want me to read his statement on it? Yiannopoulos' statement on it.
Go ahead.
At present, the privilege grant is not accepting new applications or donations, Yiannopoulos said in a statement sent by text to NBC. What started as a social experiment that did some good, winding up the SJWs whilst also sending poor kids to college, became fodder for disingenuous, mouth-breathing retards in the press to baselessly accuse me of white nationalism. As a gay man happily married to an African-American, I got tired of explaining to my husband why people on the TV keep calling me a racist. So that's that. And they're basically looking to discuss what form the future activities might take and under whose leadership, because he doesn't want to have a foot in it anymore. and they allocated all the money was given away that they did receive. So there's that. Yeah.
As long as it went to like good sources or whatever, because I remember that being a big thing, and it was a good meme and whatnot, and as long as it was going to people that deserved it. But
it's one of those things where this just seems to be a really difficult topic to address in the UK at the moment, and the education gap, which is just not being addressed in especially the university setting. But even then, it needs to be addressed before then, because obviously, if only a third of disadvantaged English and British white boys are passing their GCSEs, that's a huge problem. Like, given that, I think the level is up 65% or something, supposed to pass at a C grade or above, and that sort of thing. So,
well, it's the same thing we've been talking about forever. The fact of the matter is, anybody that talks about it or brings it up is going to be shut upon, and then nobody's going to back him up. That anybody that matters that tries to back him up is never going to be heard. It's just never going to happen. It's just never going to happen. Like, that's the way it is. Like, they're going to reject his shit. Nobody will back up what he's got to say. Nobody's going to look into it. They're just going to be like, well, that guy's racist. He wants to help white people. And we all know white people have all the privilege.
Yeah.
Because...
especially the men.
It is written. Yeah, the white men have all the privilege. It is written.
I don't know what to do. Any thoughts from British or Tale?
Really?
Not really?
Pass.
That's a fair pass. I'm just going to read...
Yeah,
it's fine. I'm going to start winding things down now. But I will read out the last two super chats. So the new IKB says, how much could one make smuggling booze from England to Scotland?
Mate, you sell it to me cheap. Mate, this has came up several times before. You come to me, I'll give you my address. You bring that shit to my house, I'll pay you top dollar.
I was actually really surprised because Ireland is actually much the same. It's now the legislation has come in. There is an absolute zero tolerance. So whereas there's some leeway on breathalyzers in the UK, in the Republic of Ireland, it's zero. You have to be a zero in order to drive. And this was a real problem for people who used to go to their local in rural Ireland, get pished, and then try and go home, on the roads at night on the lanes. But they
zero tolerance on breathalyzer. It detects anything in your bugger.
Yeah. And then there's also the case that the flipping the alcohol tax over there is now really quite expensive, and it was quite difficult to get hold of anything decent whilst I was out there. And they were like, oh, you can have a 12-pack. Not a 12-pack. A 16-pack. But it's just 4 packs tied together, and there is no discount, which is like, in this country,
4 packs
tied together. And that was the general gist. They just duck.
I'm still stuck on your first point. What if you accidentally swallow a bit of your Listerine and whatnot? Is that you?
Just
fertilizer, you know what I mean? Because Listerine's pretty nightmare.
You have a particularly breathy steak and ale pie, and that's just.
What if again? The first time I ate haggis, that was rum soaked. Am I fucked?
It depends if it was cooked in the rum or if it was soaked afterwards, I guess. But it's just a bizarre set of standards out there, given that it's known as like the alcohol drinking nation of the world. But I guess it's good for the taxi companies. I don't know. DRT is King says, free Hong Kong, get Britisher on EFAP. How do you feel about going on EFAP, Britisher? Also free Hong Kong, definitely.
I don't know.
Given that you've expressed disdain for the format, shall we say, in the past?
Don't say that. I'm going to be on it soon.
When we were talking about Red Dwarf, and the suggestion was made to do it the EFAP version of a 12-hour intricate examination of episode 1 or something like that. Well, yes, my view was none too positive.
Alright, well, again, like me and Rags are mates, and again, he's on my weekly show and whatnot. And I'm going to be on EFAP soon for something there, just for a laugh.
So I'm told as well. Yeah.
Yeah, but I did with that Star Wars thing, and I was talking to him because it was something I wanted to talk to Rags about, and I was like, no bother, I'll talk to you after it. And then 6 hours later, and I was like, you're still on it?
Yeah.
And I'm like, how long has this been running? And it's just like, mate, calm down.
They run 12 hours. Like, it's insane.
I know it's shit, but look. And I get it if you're getting changed out with people and stuff like that, and the host is sticking on it for the money. But it's just like, can you imagine being some side bit on the stream, sitting there for fucking 12 hours?
I mean, this weekend I did a 5-hour stream and a 4-hour stream, and that was enough for my throat, certainly for the time being. Yeah, it's like they do what they do very well. It's entertaining to listen to. I can't say that I listen to them in their entirety, but it's quite nice if you just jump in. That if they're running all day, and so you can jump in anytime.
Oh, I never listen to them. I never listen to EFAP, but I'm going to be on it anyway because I was like, I want to come on just to shoot the shit.
Yeah. I said Rags has got me on the list somewhere. I don't know. It should be fun. Mad Mercenary says, cigars, NSO, helped me stop smoking cigarettes. Now I only smoke 1 to 2 cigars a week. No inhaling with a cigar, so it's healthier, just flavourful. I might be in the wrong camp there with you, Mad Mercenary, because I really can't stand the flavour of cigarettes or cigars, and really I'm just in it for the nicotine.
Oh, you fucking smoke cigars when a baby's born or some shit.
Oh yeah, I smoke them on special occasions, but it's definitely what I mean. It's not a
on my birthday and every New Year and whatnot. I always could buy a nice big bottle of champagne and whatnot when I'm doing a stream or whatever. You know what I mean? But I wouldn't smoke a cigar because I don't want to bugger the computer. Yeah. But when a baby's born, you got to smoke a cigar.
Oh, I hope that AA has smoked his, definitely, with his child now coming into the world. Everyone I know seems to be having a baby, except myself, so it's quite nice to see them all coming into the world. With that, I think it's time to end. We've been a little bit overrun, but that's always pleasant for anyone watching. Thank you very much to my guests for coming along. Thank you very much for coming, Tailed.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for coming, Britcher.
A privilege, as usual.
And thank you for joining in for the latter bit, Nucker.
I apologise for derailing everything at the end, guys. Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year.
The tangents are always the best. Yes, I forget it is New Year's Eve, so we won't see you probably for New Year's because there will be things going on. But a very happy New Year to everyone who tuned in. Thank you very much for watching, and have a great week. Take care.
That tweet was false advertising, you fucking charlatan.